I love Philadelphia's team. I don't trust the coach. I think this is the only legit playoff contender where the coach is a question mark. No coach takes more points off the board than Nick Sirianni. It's unacceptable that they continue, and beyond lucky that Trevor Lawrence throws that interception. Because if Trevor Lawrence leads their team down and they win that football game, I don't think Nick Sirianni's walking in Tuesday morning as the head coach of the football team. That's that bad.
That was Dan Orlovsky today. Would it have been that bad? John McMullen's here, host of Birds 365, weekday mornings at 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, Sports Illustrated. Sirianni did talk today. He was asked a couple of times about some of the decisions. He said it's a lonely place when you don't convert. I'll put that on my shoulders, but I don't know any other solution than to trust my guys. There you go, John. A little hyperbole there, or would that have been so ugly that the team may have had to react to it?
I love these guys. No, they're not firing Nick Sirianni. I come on. Does anybody believe? And by the way, that would have been an ugly, ugly loss. Don't get me wrong, but I like Doug's thought process on that play to take a shot right there to try to steal the game, win the game. With Nakobe being in coverage, just a terrible throw by Trevor Lawrence. Nice catch by Nakobe as well. But I like the thought process from Doug Peterson. And if they would have lost the game, don't get me wrong, today would have been incredibly ugly. But, I mean, people just don't know Jeffrey Lurie if they think he's going to fire the head coach after that game.
I would agree with you.
That's the kind of stuff that's just and I've been picking on Dan lately, partially because I like Dan so much. I don't know if he's getting forced to do this. What is going on with this insanity?
Yeah, I felt that was a little overboard. I thought that was a little overboard. But his other point, of all the playoff...
but Mike, that's not a little overboard. That's ridiculous. That really is
the fact that he would say that he wouldn't have got out of there on Tuesday, I agree. That's not happening.
Yeah.
But the point that he makes that of all the playoff teams, this is the one team where I can't trust the coach. Do you look at this as hey, Sirianni really bungled this, almost lost in the game, or I asked, is this the organization's philosophy and they don't have a problem with the way that game was managed yesterday?
Yeah, it's the organization's philosophy, and they don't have a problem with the way that game was managed yesterday at all. And, I find it ironic. If you go back to the last 3 weeks, because nobody pays attention to the other team, Doug had a 4th and 3 at the plus 49 in that game and decided to punt. And I'm like, that's not Doug Peterson. He does not trust his team right now. And that came back to haunt Jacksonville. They should have went for it there. Who knows if they get it, but that's just Doug's philosophy because he comes from here. The week prior, Zach Taylor had a 4th and 1, settled for a field goal. I criticized him. The week prior, Brian Daboll had a 4th down. Now, it didn't matter. He played it cautious. And these teams get burnt, and nobody brings it up. This is amazing. And I got in trouble yesterday on the pregame show because I was just ripping people up, postgame show, because I was just ripping people left and right. I'm like, they have had such an advantage by being aggressive, really, since Doug Peterson. So for the people who just dislike Nick Sirianni, understand it's what you said, Mike. It's an organizational perspective. And it has been a huge advantage for this team because these other dumb teams punt the football and play conservatively. Now, when I say that, it doesn't always mean it's going to work. That's baked into it. And then you got to look at the philosophy behind, like 4th and 3, you're ahead 10-0. Look, that's what the Eagles do. And by the way, the play was there. AJ was open, and the quarterback was late throwing the football, and he allowed Darnell Savage to get back in the play and make it. If the play's on time, everybody's thrilled. Mm-hmm. They convert it. Nobody blinks an eye. Eagles are being the Eagles. They probably go in and score, but we'll never know because the throw was late. But the most ridiculous thing to me is questioning the tush push, questioning the 2-point conversion when Jacksonville's giving you a free yard. I mean, again, the Eagles have been doing this time and time and time again, most of the time successful. Now, it didn't work yesterday, and Jacksonville did a good job with it. But to me, it's so short-sighted to look at it in the moment. Oh, it didn't work, so it's a bad decision. How many times has it worked? Mike, they were 18 of 20 on pushes.
Yeah, I agree.
That.
We discussed this in the last. I said, listen, if something's going to work 80+% of the time, I can't question trying it again.
90% of the time going into that game. That is a no-brainer for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's not even a decision.
And just to be clear on, this isn't just the Eagles' philosophy. This is an NFL everywhere. If the ball is a penalty and they move it to the 1-yard line, teams are taking points off the board to then go for 2.
Oh, yeah. It happens all the time. It's just, and a lot of people, and like he's, the hyperbole of these only playoff coach he doesn't trust. Dan said that. I mean, the guy's got the second best record in the NFL. If all these other coaches are so much better, since Nick Sirianni's arrived in Philadelphia, he's got the second best record of any coach in the NFL. Second best record. Mm-hmm. He's got a better record than Andy Reid over that time frame. Only Matt LaFleur is ahead of him.
Yeah.
He's got the 13th best record in NFL history, percentage-wise. 13th best record. If everybody's so smart and Nick Sirianni's so dumb, how come they can't win games against the Philadelphia Eagles?
John McMullen.
I know everybody's going to default to talent, and but then they don't want to blame the talent when they make mistakes. And Jalen is late on the throw, and Saquon does some, has this phenomenal game. But why is he going down when there's a first down? Why does he not understand the situation? Why is he going down and giving himself up instead of getting the first down? I'll tell you why, because he didn't understand the situation. And even the fumble, which I thought was a bad call, and he should have been ruled down, you can't fumble that. You can't put that in the official's hand.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, I mean, obviously, and I don't know if this is just one of those preconceived things that people just don't like Sirianni, and therefore he's the one that's going to get the brunt of this. It seems that for whatever reason, they think this team has enough talent and that they're not as good as they should be.
Well, they're right where they want to be. Obviously, Washington has played one more game, and we'll see. I mean, everything's breaking Philadelphia's way. Dak Prescott's not going to be able to play next week. CD Lamb might not be able to play, and if he does play, well, I don't know why they would with Cooper Rush out there. And then that sets up the Thursday night game against the Washington Commanders, who are legit. I think they're a legit playoff-level team. But I don't think anybody looks at Washington and says, oh, that team's clearly better than the Eagles. I think there's only one team in the NFC you can say is clearly better than the Eagles, and that's Detroit. And we'll see how that shakes out the rest of the season. A lot of things can happen. Injuries. The Eagles dodged a bullet with A.J. Brown. He's gonna be day to day. He might even be able to play this week. But I think they're not that much better than Washington. They're not that much better than Green Bay. They're not that much better than Atlanta. They're not that much better than Minnesota. And if they play poorly on a given day, they can lose against those teams. But, if they play well, they can beat them. So, I think if people think they should be what Detroit is, they're overrating them a little bit.
Were there any of the decisions, John, I know it's, hey, this is who they are, but are there any of them that you questioned and said, maybe not here?
Yeah, I didn't like the when they got cute with the tush push and they went away from it. and that was really 4th and inches. That's the one I said, all right, you're going off script to what has made you what you are. So I didn't like that. But other than that, no, I didn't have any problems with what they did.
What is the theory behind 4th and 3? I know that's generally an analytics says go. You got a field goal kicker who's very good. Why 4th and 3 in that spot? Is that a go?
You're talking the 10-0, 4th and 3, the AJ, the late throw, the AJ. I mean, that's just going up. You're trying to put them away early. Really, I mean, that's a no-brainer for the Eagles as well.
Oh, I know it's a no-brainer for them, but it's generally a no-brainer for a lot. A lot of teams are. Well, the analytics sheet would say 4th and 3 from that spot on the field, you go for it, and some teams
just from the standpoint of you're taking it from a 2 to 3 score game, which 10-0 puts you to 13-0. So it's not nothing, but it keeps you at a 2-score game, so it makes it a 3-score game if you punch it in. Plus, you're dealing with a team that's not very good. That factors into it as well. The Eagles have had success, and again, the play was there to be made, and that's just sort of the teams. And again, I go back to the teams that, and it's happened 3 consecutive weeks, where Doug didn't have confidence, Zach Taylor didn't have confidence, and Brian Daboll didn't have confidence on 4th down, and it hurt them all.
Yeah.
I just find it so ironic. It's just like, I don't know what people are watching.
Yes, by the way, it was 4th and 3 at the Jacksonville 22.
Yeah.
And they went for it there.
Yeah, they're always going to go for that.
Oh, I agree. I know they're always going to go for it.
And by the way, if you're playing, it's even worse. If you are playing a team like Detroit and you're settling for a field goal, that's even dumber.
Right, because
against a team like that, you're going to need to score points and score as many points as possible and be as optimal as offensively as you can be.
Well, and the irony here, you talk about Detroit, last year, that's them. They are very aggressive. They would if Dan Campbell was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday, they would have gone for it the same as the Eagles did. And in the end, that's what ended up biting them against San Francisco, but they would do the same thing again. Yeah,
they do the same thing again. And that's what people don't understand. It's results biased. It's basically you're basically judging the play and calling that a decision. You're judging the result of the play and calling that a decision. I've talked about this for years, and it will never resonate. I get it, but that's what the average person can't get on board with the analytics community. That's their whole process. Basically, you're just playing percentages. It gives you a better percentage to win the football game.
Which,
it doesn't mean it's always going to be successful.
Right, and I am not. The problem I have with the analytics, and I get it, they're not changing, but is the analytics are built and based on regardless of opponent. Like the opponent is not taken into account in generating. Like if I do something well and it's against Detroit, that should be weighed heavier than if I do something well and it's against.
Well, that's I think a lot of people don't understand. I mean, there's a lot of public stuff where you'll be able to punch in, but the teams themselves, they hire these guys from Harvard and MIT, and they're factoring that kind of stuff in. It's not like this, the whole league is the same in a vacuum. In fact, that's one of my arguments. No, they factor that kind of stuff in. And the Eagles, for instance, look, the tush push is more successful for them than everybody else. So other teams tried to copy the tush push and were really bad at it. Certain teams. For the Eagles, it's been lights out. So they factor that in. So, and then you have so many fans that sort of puff their chest out and say, hey, When it's 1st and 10 for everybody else, it's really 1st and 9 for the Eagles because they can convert, and they've done that, Mike. They've already done that. They've been in their own territory, and they will not, if they have a 4th and inches, they will not punt the football and give up on a possession. Still, most teams in the NFL will do that. If it's 4th and inches from the 30-yard line, teams will punt the football still, except for Detroit and Philadelphia. Now, not always. Sometimes the Eagles will, but they will go for that more often than not, especially in the second half of a game, if it's a meaningful situation. They will not give up that possession. And it has worked to such an advantage. And the Eagles have won the Super Bowl, one Super Bowl victory. And one of the biggest points to that victory, one of the biggest crutches to get them to that position was they were so more aggressive than everybody else. And now, as you mentioned, some other teams have caught up, so the advantage has lessened. But back then, they were way ahead of the curve. And for whatever reason, it hasn't resonated. And it comes down to, again, the odds say 18 out of 20 coming in. Push. I mean, that's pretty good odds. And you're going to play those cards. And it didn't work on a particular Sunday. The worst thing that could happen is that the Eagles listen to all the criticism and stop doing that. But they're not going to. But that's the worst thing that could happen.
Well, poor Nick has got to be the face of all this.
Yeah. Well, he knows it. And he actually said what you're not supposed to say after the game. He said, look, when it's successful, nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it. In the weeks prior, as I said, 4th downs were very helpful to him in Cincinnati. And Zach Taylor was laying up. And now, again, they beat the Giants so poorly. It's very successful. But if that 4th and 3 conversion works, nobody's talking about it. It's just another footnote en route to a touchdown. They only talk about it when it fails. So it's a results bias. I mean, it's based on the result, and you're making that result a bad decision. They made the right decision, and they got the free yard, and they got a bad result. Good decisions don't guarantee good results, but the more good decisions guarantee more good results.
Well, it was a game that all week we were trying to find ways for Jacksonville to win the game, and a lot of it was, well, if you turn the ball over 3 and 4 times. Well, that did not happen. They did not turn it over, and yet
they almost did.
They almost did, but
they had that Saquon turnover, and then Jalen.
Oh, they did have this. Yes, they did have the Saquon turnover in the game, but for Philadelphia, for Hurts playing the game that he did, Barkley having the game that he did, for it to come down to the final play. Why do we think the game was as close as it was?
Well, I think, if you look at it, it was 22-0, 9 minutes left, about the third quarter. But Jacksonville had 36 yards. So I think it was human. That's when they went on the drive and they scored their first touchdown. And they got a 2-point conversion. And there was some really – they converted 2 2-point conversions, and there were really poor coverage on both times. So little breakdowns defensively, maybe a little bit of a letdown with young players thinking the game was over. Nick wouldn't go that far today, but I think there was some human nature there. So then it turns into 22-8, and then the Saquon fumble happens really quickly, and they score again, and they get the 2-point conversion, and bang, they're right back in the game. That's how quick it was. And, again, then they got the ball back, and Andre Cisco almost had an interception. Could have been even worse, but was unable to corral it. So, the snowball started going down the hill. The Eagles certainly started feeling it, maybe got a little bit tight. And then they were able to establish control with the Devontae drive. And that's the end of the game. Look, the biggest questionable decision for me was Jake Elliott with that 57-yard field goal. But, again, I can't criticize the Eagles for trusting Jake Elliott.
What about it's 22-16? They went for it on 4th and 1 at the 25. You kick the field goal there, you go up 2 scores.
Yeah, well,
I guess the analytics say it's 4th and 1 at the 25. Go. But, I mean, you're without A.J. Brown. Your offense is struggling. That's where the analytics, sometimes it's like, listen, I got to jump outside what the paper says and say, I'm missing my guy. Our offense is kind of struggling. Let's just go up 2 scores here, no?
Yeah, I get why people would say that, but anything under 4th and 1, I mean, they're going to go. They're going to go. And that's been the history. And maybe it changes now because they had such little success against Jacksonville. But again,
by the way, that was the play where they threw the ball instead of the tush push.
Yeah, and that's their biggest mistake. I would have stuck with the tush, but they were 4th and inches there. So I thought, that was a mistake. I thought going away from the tush push was a mistake because they would have gotten that almost certainly because it wasn't even a legit yard. It was 4th and inches. So I thought going away, it's getting a little bit too cute, and probably because they had a lack of success for the first time and they got a little bit spooked. I thought that was anytime they seemed to go away. It worked once, and I forget, it was probably DeAndre. I think it was DeAndre. It worked once when they won away from the tush push and they surprised somebody. And ever since then, it hasn't worked. And I don't like when
well,
they
it looks
go away
like yesterday they were actually lined up and then they went off sides, or there was a delay of the game or something where they were going to run the tush push formation. Look, they were sweeping to the
and
left
they did
side.
have a false. Yeah. And by the way, if the Eagles want to tweak something, what they should do is go back to the traditional quarterback sneak. I've been advocating this for a while, in that instead of having everybody lined up and bunched up and signaling what they're going to do and imposing their will, I would spread everybody out, have 5 wide, and then you can't have everybody jumbled up. And I would let Jalen just, pick the soft spot and get the traditional quarterback sneak. I think that should be the Eagles' tweak to that particular play.
Well, here's a question I have about this, okay? I agree with you. I'm not going to argue the percentages and how they convert. But is that play dependent on personnel? In other words, Barkley was not in the game. How important is he to getting the push? In other words, does Gainwell have the same oomph to kind of help that and give it that extra push that you need? So, hey, we convert this 80% of the time, but Gainwell is in the game and not Barkley. Maybe I have to reconsider it.
Yeah, I think people can nitpick everything, but they were successful with this long before Saquon got in the mix. There are other teams where I looked at, there was, Jake Browning won a game because, and Cincinnati made the playoffs essentially because Minnesota tried to tush push on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 last year, and they failed both times. And they had a Brandon Powell, who, if you know, is like 190 pounds soaking wet behind the quarterback trying to push him. And that was it. And it was just – and the quarterback, by the way, is whoever – it was Nick Mullins at the time, I think. They played so many different quarterbacks. It wasn't Josh Dobbs, but – who probably would have made it on his own. But, and so it was screwed up. So there's something – but the Eagles, they didn't have Saquon last year. They've been doing this with no matter what, and he was dealing with some kind of leg injury. So that's probably why they didn't have him in there. But he's not a key component of that play. The components are – Jalen Hurts, Cam Jurgens, Landon Dickerson, Mekhi Becton. Those are the keys to that play. Yeah, a lot of people, I had a guy who brought up, well, Jordan Mailata's not playing. Jordan himself has told me numerous times, he's like, I don't do anything on that. I mean, it doesn't involve, they're out there, they're pushing like a norm, but they're not a key to the play. And that's not an insult to Jordan Mailata or Lane Johnson. That particular play is about Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson, Mekhi Becton, obviously, and Jason Kelsey, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, they've been, Dallas Goedert was a big part. He's been out. It doesn't matter. For whatever reason, they were and by the way, they had been better this year than they were last year, 18 out of 20 until yesterday.
John, before we let you run, the trade deadline's tomorrow. Bryce Huff, that a possibility? Does that even make sense with the dead cap or anything else?
Yeah, I heard Tom said that, I believe.
Tom Pelissero from the NFL.
Yeah, I know. And now he's hurt. He had his hand wrapped up, which is weird. He hurt his hand pregame, and but he hurt his hand and he's playing late in the game. It's just a weird situation. I'm never going to say never because Jeffrey Lurie tends to approve this stuff. Generally, when you look at most teams, there's no way they're trading a guy like that. But it hasn't worked out.
They soured on him that much already.
It seems to be. And I'll tell you what, they need a rotational pass rusher, and it's pretty clear that Jalen Hunt is not ready to step in that role.
Derek Barnett available?
Well, yeah, people laugh. He's actually playing pretty well.
I know.
As a rotational player.
Yeah.
But, Brandon Graham played 37 snaps yesterday. Way too much. And even though he's playing at a very high level, for his age, obviously. Nolan Smith, I think, was at 22. Huff was at 6, and Josh was in the 40s. They want that fourth edge rusher. And I find it hard to believe they're going to trade him, but, yeah, it just seems like Vic doesn't believe he's a fit for his particular defense. It certainly looks that way.
Well, maybe the Jets and the Eagles can just kumbaya. They'll take Reddick back, and they can give him.
You can't trade Reddick back. Everybody, you can't trade somebody and trade him back. So,
all right,
that's a bummer. That's not possible.
Well, John,
Darius Smith, though, there's a lot of rumors. Detroit. If you start thinking about the future in the playoffs, a lot of rumors that Detroit's going to get Darius Smith. And that might be an arms race where the Eagles, Howie better up his game and maybe try to get Darius Smith so Detroit can't get him.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll keep our eye on that for tomorrow, obviously. John McMullen tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. on Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel at JF McMullen and here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, John.
All right, thanks, Mike.